Well, hi and welcome. Jonathan Foust here, and welcome to this webcast. I am delighted you are here. Um, got a talk I think you will find helpful. I was just reviewing it and I found it helpful. This practice is all about remembering what's important at any moment and remembering to ask yourself, am I dreaming or am I awake? Is a pretty good question to be asking. So we're going to be exploring this question over the series of the next couple talks through some archive talks from a few years ago. Hope you find them helpful. But first of all, big thank you to Rita Moran, our mindful movement leader. If you'd like to join Rita, please feel free. The link for her offering is on my website and on my Facebook page, and that starts at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, which brings you right up to here. And here is due in large part to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington and to our producer, Glenn Harrison, who manages all the technical stuff of streaming this to you. So thank you, thank you. Thank you for your support in continuing, helping me continue to roll this out. I think there are well over 600 talks over these years, and I hope at least one or two of them might resonate for you. The whole idea here is offering these practices freely. No one's denied access, no ads or anything like that. And your support, it really does help. There are, expenses and all that kind of stuff that go into making this possible. I've got a newsletter, a weekly, if you'd like to know what the next topic is, and then roughly a monthly or every couple months that gives a compendium of talks and also my best photography for that period of time. So I think that's it. Just to say, the year of living mindfully deadline has passed, and we have a very fully subscribed group. So I'm really, really delighted for that. So my next big event won't be until December, I think, when Tara and I are doing a day long together at Catholic University. But that's down the road, and I don't even have all the details yet. So preview of coming attractions. But for now, the preview of coming attractions is a short meditation and then a little introduction to the following talk. So this meditation will be approximately, um, about 12 minutes and 15 seconds. So let's see how quickly we can make this shift from linear mind to more aware of the flow state. So if you like, take some time, let your body move, adjust, let out any groans, any little micro movements. Let yourself get settled and take your seat. As you close your eyes, just take a few moments to notice there's a very deep distinction between being identified with your thoughts as the ongoing narrative and being awake and present to sensations, to the here and now in embodied awareness. So take a few moments. Open up your awareness of sound. Notice all the sounds around you. If your eyes are closed, take a moment just to sense the perception of light beyond your closed eyes. If your eyes are open, just noticing the visual stimulation. And acknowledging the doorway of touch, kind of externally, the air against your skin. Texture of your clothes against your skin. And internally, any sense of unpleasant sensations, any tightness, or discomfort, any sense of ease or free flowing feeling inside. Take a moment to acknowledge smell, just to acknowledge taste. And you might take a moment just to sense how active the brain is as a computer, taking all this raw sensory data and making sense of it, locating it in space, evaluating, ensuring that you're safe. All of this is happening automatically. And now, if you would, let your attention move into the inner felt sense of the breath. Where do you feel the breath the most predominant right now? Let your breath be free flowing, effortless. You might notice as well, if it's possible, to soften as you feel the breath, to soften the muscles of the face. Could you relax the tongue, the inside of the mouth? Can you feel the weight and the length of your arms? And just simply notice this distinction between being identified with your thinking and feeling a connection to aliveness for the next few minutes. Just let the breath be in the foreground of your attention. As many times as you notice your mind charging forward or reviewing the past, that many times you can start again. And there's an interesting little element here to explore, a particular moment in your practice, and that is that moment when you wake up realizing that you're lost in thought. Can that be a moment of mild celebration? You are awake. And as you reconnect with the felt sense of the breath, you are here. You may find as you continue to re-arrive and relax, that you become more aware of awareness itself, this quality of the observer, the witness, recognizing the streams of sensation, the streams of mood, the streams of thought, and the streams of different states in all that is changing, sensing what it is that is aware of change. And you might explore now, just in these remaining minute or so, shifting your attention from doing, that is to say, concentrating, redirecting the mind, to explore what it means to be. Is it possible to be awake and aware and at the same time allow your experience to unfold all by itself? What could relax? What could let go right now? What could relax and what could let go even more? If you like now, you can deepen your breath. Notice the space around you, the sounds, and sense what may have shifted in these minutes of turning your awareness inward. And if you like, you can gently, gently open your eyes. And welcome. I just came from a week-long silent retreat, and one of my observations was that my attention is either in one of two places. It's either lost in this world of thinking, kind of the hallucinations of the mind, creating stories, reviewing the past, or I'm actually awake in the senses. In this practice, the doorway to the present moment lies in training yourself to be deeply immersed in embodied awareness. That's the nature of this following talk on Am I Dreaming? Thoughts on Thinking, Part 1. I hope you enjoy. So many blessings in your practice. Just recently, my wonderful wife and I were sitting in kayaks on the Potomac River, right in the lee of an island, out of the sun and out of the strong current. And as we were just sort of hanging out, mostly in silence, just kind of enjoying the space, this horn on the Maryland side of the river was sounding again and again and again. And it did it over many, many, many minutes, and none of us commented on it. But then later, as it was continuing on, it would go like repeatedly, and then there'd be some silence, and then it would start again. And it was an interesting sound. It was kind of far away because of the water. You could hear it pretty well. And I said to Tara, I said, it's really interesting to see the stories that my mind makes up about that horn. So I'm pretty convinced that someone was walking with their family along the trails along the Potomac, and their 6-year-old wandered off, and they can't find him, so they're sounding the car horn so the kid can use the sound as a way of getting back to the car. And she said, well, no, actually, I think that it's a kid's party, and someone had a vuvuzela, the plastic horns that they use at soccer games, and so some kid's just going nuts on the horn. And I said, well, that might be it, but I was actually pretty convinced at first that it was some kind of an Indian festival, and they were sounding the conch. And we went on with different iterations of the stories that we were making up about this mysterious sound. And what's so interesting is watching how the mind is a story manufacturing machine. Who was right? We have no idea. But it was really fun to watch the stories come up. I'd like to share some thoughts on thinking. There's a question that you can ask yourself. If you've ever sat with Tara, she asks this question a lot, where you're sitting and you can ask yourself, am I dreaming? It's a very powerful question. How much of our life are we caught in a dream or a trance? And how much are we actually present? And what is the role of thinking anyway? So what I'd like to talk about in 4 parts. First is exploring what are the most direct, powerful questions you can ask yourself. Very, very cathartic question that starts to reveal what you are and what you aren't. I'd like to explore also how do we begin to break our reliance on thoughts as the platform for self-identification. And third, I'd like to get kind of hands-on with some essential strategies. Like, what are the basic strategies that can help you to sever your identification with thinking and thereby open up the possibility of what we could call the Buddhi mind, the awakened mind, the intuitive mind. And then fourth, if we have time, to talk about some of the really nice thoughts of love and compassion, and how you can work those in your life and in your practice. So it's been said that there are 2 fundamental questions. And this was asked by Ramana Maharshi, who had a very, very powerful early life experience, awakening experience. And his entire life was essentially teaching about inquiry meditation, reflecting on powerful questions that reveal your true nature. And he said there are 2 questions that if you continually and sincerely ask yourself this question and really move into where the question takes you, it will reveal your true nature. The first is, who am I? Or what am I? The second is, what do you really, really want? What do you really, really want? You drill into those questions and they start stripping away a lot of the content of the mind. I've shared in the past about some intensives that I've done many, many years ago that were all about this practice of deep, sustained inquiry. The most brutal retreats I have ever done. Absolutely brutal. About 18 hours a day for 3 days, 1 question. For much of the day, you're in dyad, so you're sitting across from someone and you have about 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you switch to another partner and you just keep going. 1 question. I think back on it now, I smile just because it's about as exasperating experience as you could possibly ask for. So after you go through the orientation and you're kind of sitting with it, you sit across from a partner and you ask your partner 1 question, and then you are very impassive. You're not responding in any way, and your partner explores where the question takes them, and then they try to describe their inner experience as they reflect on that question. So the question that I explored, which is kind of the beginner question, was my partner would sit across from me and then ask me, tell me who you are. And then you close your eyes, you go inward, and then you start to speak to where that question takes you. Now, it's really interesting in the beginning, of course, everyone just starts telling their story. And then after a while, what I noticed is as I would go on and on, 5 minutes and then 5 minutes and then 5 minutes, I started getting pretty bored with my story. I'm really bored. But that was nothing compared to the intense boredom I experienced listening to other people tell their story. especially the ones who would just repeat it over and over and over again. I finally, not pretty quickly, I realized, you know what? I'm not gonna repeat the stories. But what happens is, over time, you start to recognize, okay, I am a collection of stories. I'm this narrative. I'm also have a body, and the body has sensations. There are thoughts that I have, there are beliefs that I have, and there's something that's aware of all of this, and that's where it starts to get interesting. What is it that's aware of the body, aware of sensation, aware of thoughts, aware of beliefs? It's fascinating stuff. So a short reflection. If you like, you can close your eyes. You might take 3 slow breaths. And if you would, in your own way, let yourself get curious about where this question takes you. And imagine, let's just say that you could share what arises for you out loud. If no one's around, you could actually speak it aloud, but you could just imagine yourself responding to this question. Who are you? Now, as you just hold that question alive, you may notice how you're this body. There's breath happening, there's sounds that are happening, there's a feeling tone that's happening. That you are the thinker, and you're the awareness of all of this. You are, as Ajahn Chah says, the one who's aware. So again, just 30 seconds. Who are you? As you're ready, you might deepen your breath. If you like, you can open your eyes. This question, who are you, what are you, is designed to help you peel away everything you're not. We have a tendency to identify with our body, and yet we know this body is going to drop away. We identify with our sensations. We like the good ones. We hate the bad ones. We identify with our thoughts. We certainly identify with our beliefs and with our philosophy. We have our habits. But who are we really? This points toward this whole teaching of the third characteristic of reality, referred to as anatta, or not self. And I love this line from Wei Wu Wei. Ready? Here it comes. Why are you unhappy? Because 99.9% of everything you think and of everything you do is for yourself. And there isn't one. Why are you unhappy? Because 99% of everything you think and of everything you do is for yourself, and there isn't one. Okay, so this opens up a really big question. Are you your thoughts? Are you the observer of your thoughts? Do you have any control over your thoughts? I think it's safe to say that when we are over-identified with our thoughts, life gets pretty insane. Because the mind is pretty crazy. So it's time for my annual, maybe every 2 years, but I usually share this once a year. This is Dave Barry, who has a very profound description of what is referred to as in Pali as papancha, or the proliferation of random firing thoughts. I'm in an airplane, strapped into my seat, no way to escape. For an hour, we've been taxiing around Miami International Airport while lightning tries to hit us. Earlier, I was hoping that the plane might at some point actually take off and fly to our intended destination, but now I'm starting to root for the lightning, because a direct strike might silence the two women sitting in front of me. There's only one empty seat between them, but they're speaking at a decibel level that would be appropriate if one of them was in Cleveland. Also, they have Blitherer disease, which occurs when there's no filter attached to the brain, so that every thought the victim has, no matter how minor, comes blurting right out. This means that the rest of us passengers are being treated to a repartee such as, "First woman, I prefer a window seat." "Oh, not me, I always prefer an aisle seat." "That's just like my son. He lives in New Jersey and he also prefers an aisle seat." "My sister-in-law works for a dentist in New Jersey. He's an excellent dentist, but he can't pronounce his R's. He says, 'I'm afraid you need a root canal.' My brother-in-law just had that root canal. He was bleeding all over his new car, one of those Japanese ones, a Lexus. I prefer a Buick, but let me tell you, this insurance, who can afford it? I have a brother in the insurance business with angina. He prefers a window seat." "Oh, not me. I always prefer an aisle seat. Now my daughter..." And so it has gone, for one solid hour, a live broadcast of random neural firings. The harder I try to ignore it, the more my brain focuses on it. But it could be worse. I could be the flight attendant. The story goes on, but I think that pretty much says it all. Papancha is the proliferation of thinking. It's the mind just generating content. Now, it's kind of easy to sit there and laugh at someone, but of course, our minds do exactly the same thing. It's just crazy what the mind does. And I've always, I've shared this many times, but mindfulness is like looking at your web browser. You look back at all the things, different things you clicked on, and it's crazy. As I've shared before, I start off researching a quote for a talk, and 15 clicks later, I'm watching bear wrestling in Siberia. This is what the mind does. And the question becomes, do we have any control over it? Some would say no. Others say, well, yeah, actually, you do have some directive function here. And probably one of the simplest ways to look at it is it's kind of two tracks, one or the other. You may explore how when you are in your narrative or your story, chances are you are disconnected from the senses, from the body. When you are directly connected to the senses, you are either not identified or less identified with the narrative aspect of the mind. So, again, Zen pop quiz, if you would, if you can just close your eyes for a little bit. And if you would, let your attention explore what it's like to feel the space or the volume in your right thumb. Can you imagine the volume or the space inside your right thumb? And now for the next, say, 20 seconds, just notice when your mind might generate a thought or commentary and how it might disconnect you from the sense of the space inside your thumb. And when you reconnect with the space inside your thumb, you may notice a quality of arriving. Can you imagine the space inside your right thumb? Ten more seconds. You might remain with your eyes closed, or if you like, you can open your eyes. Now, there's a chance that you noticed your attention toggling between the space inside your right thumb and then either something completely unrelated or maybe some commentary about the experience. There's also a possibility that you had no awareness whatsoever of the space inside your thumb, and you were simply kind of lost in discursive thinking. Or a third possibility is that you sustained attention on the space inside your thumb, and there wasn't much room for the cognitive commentary thinking process. And you may have noticed that you were kind of lost in thought, but then you would come back to the space inside your thumb and you would notice kind of a re-relaxing, kind of a re-arriving. And this is, I think, a really key distinction in our practice. The distinction between thinking about your experience and having your experience. And this is the first foundation of mindfulness practice. Mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of everything that arises from the body, because the body only lives in the here and now. The body doesn't live in the future. It does not live in the past. So anytime you reconnect, say, this breath, you re-arrive. And that's why in this form of meditation, when it comes to the gathering of attention, you are invited to come back again and again and again. No matter how sophisticated the instruction, you're coming back to the here and now, to the direct experience of sensation. And what happens when you do this? You really are changing your brain when you do this practice. You are building up gray matter when you do this practice. It's one thing to focus, but anytime you choose a focus and you refocus, you are developing and laying down new tracks in your brain. It's a fascinating thing how it works. So we have the discursive mind. We have kind of the narrative, the commentary that's kind of like pretty much spending all of its time trying to keep a cohesive narrative going that makes sense. And then we have this other realm of little intuitive flashes of insight. I got sucked into playing Wordle on the New York Times. So I've got two friends and we share our Wordle results. And just recently I was working on my Wordle thing and I was staring at the grid for a really long time. I had I, D, and Y. And the D and Y were at the fourth and fifth place. The I was somewhere else. I could not figure this thing out. I think I was at like the fourth level, so there weren't that many words, any letters left. And I just thought, forget it. So I kind of closed it up. I went for a swim, and when I came back, I sat down and I knew the word, giddy. So how does that happen? I was focused on this game. I completely forgot about it. I sat down. The answer was right there. This is part of the brilliant function of the mind and the mystery of the mind. If you've ever wondered where something was and then you forget about it and you realize where you left it, Or when you're on meditation, when you're meditating and you start having some insights. That is to say, you start seeing things outside your normal point of view, your normal perspective. Now, what is it that creates an insight? I've talked about this a lot. It's a point of fascination for me. I've noticed that insights are kind of like lottery tickets, as they say. You have to be present to win. It's only when I'm deeply, deeply present that I'll experience some new thing outside my linear mind. And primarily, it's about shifting my state from trying to figure it out to more of a receptive, kind of intuitive state. We can't make intuition happen, but we can set the appropriate stage and the ideal conditions. So simply by remembering the here and now and the senses, you make a shift from over-identification with thinking. It's like all things, it's so simple, just not easy. And it opens up all kinds of new possibilities. Now, in mindfulness, you can investigate thinking and beliefs. Beliefs are just repetitive thoughts. And we'll explore a little bit more of that down the road. But what I'd like to share with you with the time I have remaining, got a little bit of time remaining, is some of the practical ways that you can develop this capacity to move from identification with thinking to the awareness of thinking and to the possibility of insight. So recently I was leading a retreat, a day-long retreat, and I really wanted to lead something different and special. I hadn't led a retreat in a while, and I was looking forward to being back, and I wanted to do something that would really be meaningful, something different. Part of that was kind of wanting to provide something for the group, but also to make it kind of fun. And it was so interesting because I had this kind of elaborate plan of what we were going to explore during that retreat. And as we kind of sat, for our first meditation for the day, I could tell that everyone was glad to be there. People were open and attentive, and started the first meditation on breath, anapanasati. And I could just feel like this is what we need to do today. Just to relax and follow the breath. My sophisticated plans for the retreat kind of all went out the window because there was just this reminder of this is the practice. Arrive again and again in the here and now. Steep yourself in the here and now. This is the practice. I did a month-long retreat decades ago, my first month-long retreat. And I kept waiting for the instructions to change, and they really didn't. And I began to realize how every time I would engage into meditation, I was doing the same technique, and yet I was different every time. So much changed for me over the course of that month by doing these essential practices. So I'd like to leave just a little bit of experience with you and to kind of refresh some of the essentials. If you like, you can close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, one of the most helpful ways to practice is using breath as your tool. And breath is an ancient form of practice, of severing identification with thinking, that expresses itself through all kinds of different traditions. And if you ask yourself the following question, notice what happens. Where do you feel the breath the most predominant on the inside right now? If you do this ancient breathing technique, it's gone through many, many names. I'll spare you the names and just share the experience. On the next inhalation, if you breathe into the count of 4, on the exhalation, breathe out to the count of 4. Breathing in to the count of 4. Breathing out to the count of 4. Continue now matching the length of the inhalation with the length of the exhalation, and sense how much you can bring your focused attention to the counting, but also to the experience on the inside. Notice how when the mind comes in with a narrative or commentary, you have the option to just sever it and come right back to wherever you left off, counting the length of the inhalation and the length of the exhalation. And now, if you would, release control of the breath. And just feel the imprint, feel the effect. Has anything shifted over the course of just these minutes of breath? Now, there are a few things that happen with mindfulness of the breath. In this case, controlled breathing. You're giving the mind a job to do. You're taking this mind, this ADDHD mind, and you're saying, I'm going to throw a stick for you. And here's the stick. Count to 4 on the inhalation, count to 4 on the exhalation. So mind's got a job to do. Now, when you do that, this falls into the category of shamatha, or calming practices. It actually calms the mind when you do that. Paradoxical, because I think of concentration as work, but actually getting focused is actually calming and absorbing. So that's one thing that occurs when you're paying attention to controlled breathing. The second thing is you're changing your physiology. How you breathe directly affects how you feel. When you're upset, chances are your breath is ragged, shallow. When your breath is smooth and easy and regular, chances are you've regulated your nervous system in a way that you feel more present and more aware. Sometimes I just use the mantra 3 breaths as a way to kind of break my thought pattern. Just 3 breaths. And oftentimes I'll just add a little exhalation on the exhalation. So again, let's try it right now. 3 breaths, relaxing on the exhalation. Just notice what happens. There's a chance that you feel a little more relaxed. If you feel a little more relaxed, you'll feel more. You'll be more aware of the sounds of what you're feeling. You can even become more aware of the thought patterns that are occurring, to be able to name or label thoughts, which we'll get to in a little bit. So Controlled breathing is very, very powerful. And of course, what this leads to is just being aware of unrestricted breathing, which gets a little bit more difficult. But I often find for myself, because my mind gets a little bit wound up, that doing a few minutes of controlled breathing is a helpful way for me to gather my attention so I can move into the subtlety of breathing. In the practice of anapanasati, or breath-based awareness, you're actually not controlling your breath. The breath is actually free-flowing. So let's just try this just for a few moments. If you like, again, you can close your eyes. And just for the next 40 seconds, just track where you feel the breath on the inside. And let the breath be absolutely effortless. How intimately can you feel it? If you like, you can open your eyes. People in the past have told me how much they love yoga and how much they hate meditation. Part of why they love yoga is that it's a lot easier to stay in contact with the here and now when you are trying to hang on in a yoga posture, for example. But it's really important, a very skillful thing in your practice. If you're using breath as your anchor and your mind is just a caffeinated chipmunk, you might want to explore controlling your breathing for a little while. It gives a little more content for your mind to focus on. So this is such an essential practice, mindfulness of breath. And yet, there are so many other techniques. And another technique for kind of severing identification with thinking when thinking is running amok is the fundamental body scan meditation. Now, there are many ways you can practice the body scan meditation, and different traditions emphasize it more than others. There are some in the Vipassana tradition where that is the practice. You scan from the crown of the head down to the toes, and you do that repeatedly. Other meditative traditions just have it there as sort of like a technique on the side that you can do. But if there's one that works for you, I highly encourage you to explore. The first time I got deeply introduced to this, of course, was through yoga, with the yoga nidra, the lying down practice at the end of a yoga class, which incredibly powerful to kind of relax and to feel and to go that intimately into deep relaxation. Incredibly restorative. And then I went to do a retreat with S.N. Goenka. And if you're not familiar with S.N. Goenka, a very powerful teacher, and he basically articulated a tradition that is used a lot. It's in a lot of, used a lot in prisons. There are Goenka retreats kind of all over the country, and they're very, very classical and very traditional. I came from kind of the flowing, feel your feelings yoga world. And then I stumbled into this 10-day retreat, and oh my God. Essentially, it's about as monastic as you can get. It's 10 days, 10 hours a day, no reading, no writing, no eye contact, no exercise, because they really want you to get the technique. You take your vows, just regular monk vows at the beginning of the retreat. There's no food available after noon per the classical guidelines, although there's like tea and fruit for newbies in place of dinner. The first 4 days, you're focusing on breath, on anapanasati. That's just basic breath awareness, but with a particular focus. The first day is sort of like generally aware of the breath, and then you sort of narrow attention to the rim of the nostrils, and then you start to kind of sense, if you can, the breath outside the body, that is to say, the breath outside the nostrils. Very, very subtle, very intense. They're long sits, and there's no escape. So it's just you and you. Then on the fourth day, they actually initiate you into this body scan technique. And there are different ways that you do the body scan. But essentially, you're starting at the crown of the head. You're working your way down through the feet. Sometimes it's helpful to do it very kind of like general. Think of body parts. When you get really, really focused, you can imagine like the size of a quarter, and you're just sort of scanning around. And it can take 45 minutes to go through your body. It becomes a fascinating practice because you get concentrated, but also you're really hanging out at this first foundation. When the mind comes in, you come right back to the sensations themselves. Something very, very powerful about using the body scan in your practice. I'm aware our time is flying by, and I'm barely through what I wanted to share with you. But why don't we do this? Let's take a little bit of time to explore, kind of review some of the elements of the body scan meditation, because there are some distinctions here that you might find helpful. So this will be just for maybe about 4 or 5 minutes. So if you like, you might close your eyes. One of the interesting elements in the body scan is to remember that you're not trying to make anything happen. You're not trying to stream energy. You're not visualizing light. You're not imagining it whole. You're not imagining it filled with loving presence. You're just coming in direct contact with what's there. So you might just sense right now the crown of your head, sensing the scalp from the inside out. Now you may notice there's an interesting thing. Kind of what yoga says is that prana follows chitta. Energy follows attention. You might find as you bring your attention to the crown of your head, you might notice some tingling. You might notice some vibration. Because as the attention flows there, you'll have this awareness of heightened energy sometimes. Now you might imagine that felt sense of the crown of the head now flowing down over your forehead, sensing from the inside out, the forehead, and the muscles around the eyes. And how intimately can you explore or examine all the muscles around the eyes? Letting your attention now move to the back of your skull. Down to the base of the skull. Feeling from the inside out the muscles of your face. And as you sustain attention here, you may notice any subtle holding, any subtle tensions. And you may notice perhaps some relaxation, some flow of energy. Exploring now the inside of your mouth. The mind may come in with a commentary, but the primary attention is to come back to the sensations right now on the inside of your mouth. Feeling from the inside out the lips. Feeling from the inside the tongue, the root of the tongue. Feeling now the space inside the throat. Take a few moments now. You might let your awareness just generally flow through the body from the inside out. How intimately can you make contact with the aliveness of sensation and feeling? If you like, you can deepen your breath. You might ask yourself, right now, am I dreaming? If you like, you can open your eyes. I believe that one of the most important things our heart is called to is to wake up. Part of this waking up is realizing that we are the body and not the body. We are our thoughts and the awareness of thought. We are the awareness itself. And paradoxically, we reinforce that sense of non-judging awareness, of awake awareness through the experience of here and now. The body becomes something not so much to escape, but actually a tool that guides us directly to the here and now. So much more to explore. I look forward to sharing more on this, of the different ways that you can begin to reinforce who you are as the observer. Some of the ways you can begin to deconstruct that thought process. And some of the ways that you can begin to tune in to what it means to be aware of awareness itself. It's juicy stuff. In the meantime, let the here and now in your body and your senses be your refuge. So many blessings on your practice. Thank you so much for your time and attention.